by inviting our teams to develop a community plan for kindergarten transitions. This collaboration effort was developed to help sustain and improve gains children made in their early childhood settings through building strong, effective relationships between Head Start and receiving schools. So some examples of the goals that we had for the summit were to identify examples of effective kindergarten readiness practices, including strategies to support smooth transitions to kindergarten, to expand and enhance relationships between all early childhood programs and school districts to support kindergarten readiness, and then to provide tools, supports, and information to strengthen kindergarten readiness practices. There were a total of 16 teams that participated in the summit. And now I will pass this on to Jennifer to share a little bit more information about the teams.
Thanks, Kim. We're really happy to be here today. So thank you for that overview and that history. And today there are approximately 23 communities, a mix of kindergarten readiness subgrantees and the original summit participants who continue to do this work. The team composition really varies by community, but includes members of the local school district or districts, depending on the geographic area. Some teams include private schools as well, Head Start programs, childcare providers, home and or center-based providers. Parents are often found on some of these teams. Community partners, including mental health or health departments, other child serving organizations, and of course, Part B or special education service providers. Our current teams are spread across Kansas, from Kansas City to Garden City and from Pittsburgh to Salina. And given the fact that the first summit was held about 6 months into the pandemic and that the pandemic has continued ever since, challenging each member of these community teams in really different ways. The work that's been accomplished in these teams has been incredible. So it's highly collaborative work, something that's been particularly challenging over the past 2 years. And each team is in various stages of their work together. But nonetheless, the goals of the 2020 summit that Kim mentioned have really been achieved. And I think you'll see some good examples of that. We hosted a virtual panel session during the November 2021 KSDE conference, where members of various teams answered questions about their current work. And a recording of that webinar has been included in today's resources list, so you can view that as you have time. And we've recently surveyed some of these teams to check in to see what's working well for them and ask, where do we go from here? So we'll be diving a little deeper into that later today. So why do we care about kindergarten transitions? Next slide, please. The Office of Head Start estimates that approximately 320,000 children transition to kindergarten each year. That's a lot. And I mentioned this on the November call, but I remember the day my own child transitioned from her consistent, predictable routine at preschool, where she'd spent glorious years in the care of wonderful providers, to the wild world of kindergarten. And although her transition went relatively smoothly, it was still a big shock to the system, to me, to her, to our family. And we know that even positive changes can be challenging. But we also know that for some children and families, the transition to kindergarten doesn't go as smoothly. But when children and their families experience successful kindergarten transitions, we know that they experience reduced social emotional stress, that the families are more likely to be involved in their children's school, and children are more likely to have improved academic growth. And I think we would all be in agreement that we want these things for children and families. So Head Start programs have long been charged with the task of working with their local school districts to ensure that children have a successful transition into the K-12 system. But only in more recent years did we further define what activities and practices that includes, what additional entities should be involved in planning for these transitions in communities, because it can't and it shouldn't be just a Head Start school district conversation. It's much broader than that. And we've learned more about how these things can work successfully. We know that to ensure successful transitions, it's important to have school connection across 4 different points that are outlined above, supported by the practices of information sharing, building relationships, and establishing alignment between various systems, policies, and practices. So these points of connections and practice and community cohesion will only be more important in the coming years, and probably were this school year too, when we think about serving children who may have never been enrolled in any type of preschool childcare program because of the pandemic. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim now to put some meaning behind these 4 points of connections, and then we'll take a look at some specific examples of these connections in practice.
So as Jennifer mentioned, all of these connections play an essential role in developing a successful kindergarten transition plan. And so today we will share examples of work being done around each of these 4 points of connections, starting with child school connection. This first point, connection point, is to provide children with a familiar, stable relationships and classroom experiences to help make that transition process a little less stressful for the child. The family school connection is to foster family collaborations and engagement with the school. And this is really essential to keep in mind that families are to be very much a part of this process and not to leave them out. The program school connection is to align practices, environments, and information between early childhood settings, because as Jennifer mentioned, children are coming from a variety of settings into the kindergarten environment. And then the community school connection is to create a network of understanding and support around the kindergarten transitions. And this is really important to help gather that community support and understanding of the importance of the process. So now I will turn it over to Jennifer to talk about our first point of connection and share some examples from our transition teams.
Thanks, Kim. So the first point is really this child school connection. And I know as we go through these examples, I know there's a couple of partners from various communities on today's webinar. So as we're going through the slides and highlighting a few examples, if you're part of a team that's been doing this work, please feel free to share or highlight highlight what you've been doing either in the chat or come off mute. I know we're kind of crunched for time, so we need to be aware of that, but would love to hear from you if you wish. Also, some of the examples that we may talk about could touch on points of connection across a few different areas. So you might see some examples of that as well. So one example that I wanted to highlight here is this YouTube link that will be in your resources. This is a video that was produced out of USD 470 in Arc City. It is a video for incoming kindergartners. And I'm just going to say that the first time I watched this, I was crying on a call right after I'd started this job, but it is amazing. It is a great video for kids. Other examples that we've seen are in-person kindergarten roundups. I've already seen those types of things being advertised, playground, play dates, and meetups for incoming kindergartners. And then, other examples of this would be really helping to establish relationships between children enrolled in Head Start and other types of pre-K programs with kindergarten educators. So having children practice kindergarten routines, having them visit kindergarten, having children sing songs that are sung in kindergarten. So that could be done with parents at home, with family care providers and child care centers, reading books that discuss going to kindergarten and creating space for conversations with this about with their child care providers. And it's been really interesting to see the variety of child school connections across various communities. So I had the pleasure of actually getting to visit Southern Lyon County School District and Arc City recently. And in those communities, the pre-K and Head Start programs are located within elementary schools. So those children grow up in a school environment. They see the teachers that they're going to be interacting with. They eat lunch often in the same lunchrooms as the big kids. But for communities who don't have this type of setup, or communities that are looking to centralize early childhood services into one building, forming those child school connections can look different. And this has been the beauty of this work together, is having space to talk about all of these nuances between communities and learn from each other as the landscape shifts and looks a little different from community to community. The next point of connection we're going to highlight is family school, and I'm going to give it back to Kim.
So we have several examples here of some of those family school connections, and I'll start with Lawrence, where they held a transition fair focusing on community resources available to families to ensure that their child is ready for kindergarten. And then in Winfield, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they created a virtual roundup experience at each elementary school for incoming kindergarten students and parents. And this was a nice way to allow those students to be able to see what the inside of the school was like and what their classroom might look like. Since at that time they weren't able to physically go into the room for a roundup, so they were at least able to have that video to watch to see what their kindergarten experience may be like. And then in Wyandotte County, they disseminated 1,500 kindergarten readiness kits to all 4-year-olds in the community. And then along that family school connection piece, there were also several transition teams that also provided opportunities for families to learn more about the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which has been recognized as our kindergarten readiness snapshot tool. So it was able to provide families with more information about that. And I see Amy has her hand up. Did you want to add some more information?
I was going to jump in on the program school point of connection.
Okay, sure. I will let you jump in on that point, and then when you're finished, we'll turn it back to Jennifer and she will share some examples of the program school connection.
Okay, I just want to ask, because I'm not sure what our timing here is. I have a couple of pieces that we've printed or graphic pieces that we've made. Do I have a chance to share those, or are we too tight on time?
No, Amy, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. How do I do that? Let's see, share screen. And where's my, okay.
Amy, we always have time for you. I feel like you shouldn't even ask at this point.
You guys are the bee's knees. Okay, so what I'll tell you is our general idea was we wanted to create a transition folder that would start at the beginning of the year. We would start by giving this folder out to parents of our pre-K kiddos in the early childhood, in the pre-K classrooms. And then my goodness, I'm all over the place with this. Sorry, I keep failing to share the screen. And then they would add to this folder as the year goes on. Can you guys see this? The Ready, Set, Kindergarten. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so this is one of the pieces that will go into it, kind of a rack card thing. You can see the shape and size of it. It'll on the front, it has kind of an at a glance. These are the kinds of things that you'll be wanting to do over the course of your child's pre-K year before they go into kindergarten. On the back, it's a list of books you can be reading with your child. Again, courtesy of the Lawrence Kindergarten Transition Team and grant funding from the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund, all in for Kansas kids. Just I don't know if my view will, if I can zoom in on this a little bit, but it starts out with just talking about social emotional development, continue to read with your child, that an assessment like an ASQ may be done at your preschool, contact the district early in that pre-K year if you have some concerns, go ahead and get your well check done, etc. Things that you want to do in the spring, documents that you want to get ready for your enrollment paperwork, get signed up for orientation, get on your social media networks with your in elementary school, looking for activities to do in the neighborhood, maybe a kindergarten camp or something that your particular elementary school is doing, and then starting to look at the beginning of the kindergarten years at the school calendar, and then joining your PTA, PTO, etc. If I can go to the next page, did it allow me to flip? Can you guys see this one now? A new document. Okay, so this one, if it will let me show you the full thing, is the folder checklist. So this folder checklist is the things that the parents would want to be gathering through the year. So while they're still at the preschool and before they leave and go on to the kindergarten, they're going to want to have put into their folder some assessment results from us. If we've done the ASQ with them, they want us to go ahead and put that in the folder. If we've got work samples, they're going to want us to put that in the folder. And then the transition form I'm going to explain to you in a second, we're going to get that transition form in there. Then this folder is also a place for them to gather their school enrollment paperwork. If they didn't go to preschool, the transition form, because we're going to try to make sure it gets out in the community for people that maybe didn't go to an organized preschool. If they didn't for whatever reason, or they're not in a formal program, then they can obtain this transition or this the transition folder from another place within the community. And then from their elementary school, they're going to collect their orientation paperwork, school supply list, calendars, etc. And then just reminders to check with Boys and Girls Club, because in Lawrence, that's where you're going to get your before and after school care, etc. So those are two of the things that will start in their folder. And then I think I have to probably stop the share to get to a different document, I think. So I'm going to do that. The Word document that's going to go in here, this is what we call our student transition information form. This is a work in progress, so I'm gonna throw that out there right now. But the idea is that this is for us to fill out or the parent to fill out. Again, if they're not in a formal pre-K program, the parent can fill this out. The problem we ran into is we wanted to be able to share information with the kindergarten teacher, but we weren't sure if, with confidentiality issues, if that was going to be a huge stumbling block for us. So we thought, well, we'll just run it through the parent, let the parent give it to the kindergarten teacher. So we created a little box here that they could initial it and say that if the kindergarten teacher wanted to reach out to the pre-K teacher, that they had their permission to go back to the pre-K teacher. So we went ahead and put contact information in there, went ahead and we tried to make it strengths based. So there's information to talk about what we found was a strength for the child, some areas to work on. If there were some areas we were working on, strategies that were successful and those that maybe weren't successful. If there were any challenging or unwanted behaviors, mastering self-help skills. The back page has some of these basic things that we thought maybe they should want to know. So, and as I mentioned, this is a work in progress. We are working with some kindergarten teachers because we want to find out, is this really what they want to know? So that's the big question. What is the most valuable information that we can share with them? What do those kindergarten teachers need to know? Do they want that connection piece with the pre-K teacher? What are we missing? So we're going to reach out to some more of the district staff here in Lawrence to try to find that out and come up with a viable format for this form. We're going to do sort of a rough draft and do a trial run on this transition packet this summer and get this form out with 4 centers this summer that have agreed to try this trial run with it and see how we do going into next year. So that's kind of where we are with that. And I guess that falls under the program school point of connection, sharing information. And that's what we're working on. So hope I didn't take up too much time. Sorry.
No, Amy, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And Mary is our facilitator. She's got anything to add if I left anything out.
Well, and we have several people in the chat asking if they can have access to those materials. And I think someone from the Lawrence team just gave their email address that you could reach out
Okay.
to. So make sure you make a note of that.
Very good. Okay, well, great. Yeah, I'm sure we'd be happy to help you guys. This is, work in progress for us too, but we're happy to help.
Thanks so much, Amy. And I
Of
think,
course.
you can see on the screen some other examples of Program School Connection. But I think what Amy kind of highlighted that seems to be really a common theme amongst many of the communities right now is really this focus on creating some alignment, right, through shared curricula like conscious discipline, through some shared professional development and planning time. And then also a lot of communities are starting to really have the conversations around how do we share information and data, and how can we share that back and forth between the pre-K, the childcare providers, and the schools. And so there is a lot of exciting work happening in this Program School Point of Connection. And one of the communities that is on this list, Garden City, has actually been doing this kindergarten transition team work the longest. So just for a historical point of reference, they were selected as a demonstration community back in 2019 by the Office of Head Start. And so they've come pretty far in their work. Anyway, lots of exciting work going on. I think this is the area where there are the most examples to share. And to me, that's really exciting, especially just personally watching that pre-K Head Start school district collaboration is exciting. So Kim, I will turn it over to you for the community school portion.
So here are just a few examples of the work that is continuing in the Community School Connection. Shawnee County had developed, their transition team developed a website that was accessible. Anybody that lived in the county could access this website to find out what school their child would be attending based on where they lived in that county. And it also had provided the families with access to support and resource information regarding to kindergarten transitions. And so it's similar to the brochure information that Amy shared. Shawnee County had created this website to provide these similar resources and information. And then Lawrence was able to utilize funding for a part-time position that was their kindergarten ambassador. And the role of this ambassador was to make connections between children, families, childcare, and schools. And Amy, two things. One, I noticed Reva made a comment in the chat. She said that that website will actually launch on February the 28th. And then Reva, did you want to share anything more about that website? You don't have to. I just give you the opportunity.
I'm just excited to have it being unveiled very soon. The Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library took the lead and did a lot of the heavy lifting. So we're just super excited. We have 6 school districts in our county, and the website will help families be able to go to the website, find the district that they're in, and then link directly to a page on the district's website that will have kindergarten enrollment information and specific school information. So we're super excited to be launching it, but we're not quite there. So you'll have to check it out next week.
That sounds great. Thanks, Reva, for that update. And Amy, I noticed you put a comment in the chat regarding your kindergarten ambassador. Was there any additional information you wanted to share about that?
So she was the one that created all of those documents for our transition folder. So she's been an amazing asset to us. So we've been very, very thrilled with it.
Great. Lots of wonderful things going on there. So I believe next up, I will let Jennifer follow up with lessons learned.
Thanks, Kim. So as I mentioned earlier, we recently surveyed some communities doing this kindergarten transition work to get an idea of how people were feeling about the work, where they might need additional support, lessons learned, et cetera. And I thought it might be good to include some of this information for today's webinar in case it would be helpful to those of you who might be considering the formation of a team to focus on this work in your community. And I am so glad that we asked these questions, as the answers that we collected also point to some considerations for next steps or expansions of the current work in existing communities. So you can see there's the common themes of scheduling time to meet for collaboration, the need for ongoing communication, including all voices around the table. And I really enjoyed the comment about catching those students who do not attend pre-K services is tough, because this is a great area to focus on when we think about how to expand this work. Another comment that isn't listed on this slide, but that came off of the survey, was that the team had learned that there is a real desire in the community to connect with families, and that many families need and want help through this transition process. And that really resonated with me. I think that's very true. Schools, educational institutions can be really intimidating environments for parents, particularly if parents didn't have positive school experiences themselves. So, going into this work, not assuming that all parents know what to do or expect is a good way to approach the things that are the work around kindergarten transition. We also asked about challenges, and many programs mentioned time to meet as a team because of closings, staffing issues, COVID, busy schedules. But a lesson learned mentioned in this section that I thought was interesting was this community is really trying to figure out how to work alongside non-traditional partners. So city officials, chambers of commerce, utility companies, and other agencies, because this community was noticing that when those entities, particularly city officials, got involved in this kindergarten and early childhood work, communication and community awareness really increased. So again, just another something to think about as we think about what this work should look like in communities. Next slide is Kim, and this is about some advice that we learned from these communities.
So here you can see some of the responses that were captured from the kindergarten transition teams when they were asked what advice they would give to other communities when thinking about doing this work. And the common themes and some takeaways from the information that they provided was, to be sure to include a diverse group of individuals on your team. Think big and listen to your families. Other comments were to make sure that you included, not only representatives from the community, but also not to forget, even your school district principals and key school district leaders. And it's important to analyze and collect data to inform the progress, to look for those resource opportunities in the community and attract a wide range of organizations into your kindergarten transition plan. Another comment that was very simply put, but yet super powerful, and that is the cooperative efforts that benefit the children, and that's what it's all about, is the kids. Another comment that was made was, give yourself some grace. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges with recruiting and retaining members. And so one suggestion was, just to start out, to try to get a few strong leaders on board. And then you can grow your team from there when the time is right. And then another comment that was shared with us too was, to really be mindful and look for those resources that are out there. So when you're thinking about what types of resources that you might need before, potentially creating something that's already out there, and spending valuable time in doing that, see what is available, what you may be able to utilize. And as we go further into our presentation, we will have some resource links to share to help you along your path to a kindergarten transition plan. So I will turn it, to Jennifer.
So moving forward, we are in the process of planning some lunch and learn sessions around various kindergarten transition topics. And so we've asked some current teams for input on these topics. We would also like to hold some office hours or times for shared discussion around lessons learned, challenges and successes, as this is something that was mentioned as a continued need with the current teams and something that they found very valuable. So I think something that wasn't mentioned, that we didn't mention yet, was throughout this work, there has been time for that type of cross-team collaboration. And so there have been set spaces with consultants to work with teams, and then for teams to come together across the state and really share, like I mentioned, lessons learned. And so this has been very valuable. That came through very strongly in the survey, that was time that everybody really appreciated. We're also kicking around the idea of holding an in-person kindergarten summit, which could involve existing teams and then maybe any new teams. And so that sounds like a lot of fun and would be wonderful. So stay tuned for more information. I think we will all be ready to see each other maybe by fall of 2020. I don't know, fall of 2020, spring of 2023, hopefully soon. Also, we would be interested in knowing what this group wants to know. So they are going to drop a survey link in the chat, and it is, I promise, just 4 quick questions. Very easy. Your name, your email address. Would you be interested in attending a lunch and learn on kindergarten transition works? And if so, what topic or topics would you be interested in exploring? So if you would not mind taking just a moment to fill that out before this webinar ends, we would really appreciate your feedback, because we'd like to plan these lunch and learns around what people really want to know and want to dig into. And as Kim mentioned, on the next slide, we've linked some kindergarten transition resources. And Kim, I don't know if you want to highlight any of those.
Sure. So these are some of the resources that we actually utilized when we had our Kindergarten Transition Summit in the fall of 2020. These resources are from the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, which is a Head Start-based website. And there's a lot of wonderful resource documents and videos here that can be utilized for your transition work. I would like to point out the last bulleted link there is an example of transition work that was done around those 4 connection points that we talked about today during this webinar. And these are examples from other states that have done this type of transition work. And so it just provides you another opportunity to see some other examples that were shared and to see what some other states are doing in those areas of those 4 connection points.
Yeah, and Kim, I would just add, if you go to that, if you just went to the ECLKC website and type kindergarten transitions in the search bar there is so much information there. There are these documents as well as videos, recorded webinars, just so much information that it's fantastic. It's almost overload, but lots of wonderful resources on that website. And then I believe, Debbie, I'm going to turn it back to you if you want to talk a little bit about the Kindergarten Transitions Toolkit that was developed.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So in 2020, there was a subcommittee of the Early Childhood Recommendations Panel called the Kindergarten Transitions Work Group. And many of those people on that group are joining us on the webinar today. And they developed a kindergarten transitions toolkit that was approved by the Kansas Children's Cabinet in December of 2020. And the resources in this toolkit were designed to be used as a starting point by communities to make them customized to fit their needs. Locally, you've kind of seen some of the examples that were shared today about all the different ways and things that communities are doing things. And so this is just a toolkit with resources for that. And if we can go to the next slide, there's components of the toolkit, and these are all customizable to what your needs are. And one of the biggest pieces of this toolkit is the Memorandum of Understanding template. So this MOU kind of lines out it outlines some elements that each community might find helpful in building this agreement that they have between their community partners. And the MOU lists things such as the purpose of the work and the collaborative ways that the community partners can work together, such as maybe communication, management structure, those types of things. And then it also has a section for roles and responsibilities of the participants on the team, and how to establish those and delegate out those responsibilities. It includes activities and milestones of how the team will accomplish its goals, and a list of those examples are provided in the appendix to the MOU, as well as a work plan document that was created that lays out a suggested step-by-step timeline of how that work can be accomplished. And we've also, we've heard about some of the potential community partners that are involved in this whole process. And a list of those is also provided in the appendix, but it isn't all inclusive. So it can be added to or taken away from, whatever each community's planning process needs are. And then there's also a section with terms of the agreement to include maybe possible start and end dates, budgets, time commitments, reporting requirements, whatever someone determines necessary. And so the MOU itself is there again as a template for accomplishing these things. And then these supporting documents, some of which I already mentioned, are part of it, and they can serve as the resources. There's a one-pager benefits page, which provides a chart of how successful kindergarten transition planning benefits communities, the various stakeholders and those partners that we mentioned, the family, child, school, community, the early learning professionals. And you might want to use this one-pager benefit to recruit members to your planning team, or to go talk to the school district, or in whatever way you might need to use that to help with your work. And then again, the appendix that includes some of those things that I mentioned. And we also want you to help us share this toolkit. So there's an email template that's available as you try to reach out to your networks with this information that you can use to send this out. And so it is living on the Children's Cabinet website. This link can take you to the toolkit and all of the documents that I've talked about, as well as there's a link here provided on opportunities of ways to get involved with other things that are happening with the Children's Cabinet and the All In for Kansas Kids. The webinar, of course, which we're in right now, the stakeholder group meetings, sharing feedback, sharing stories, if you want to receive the weekly email updates if you're not already. So you can definitely go to these links and find those resources. And I am happy to take some questions, or have Jennifer and Kim field some questions that some of you might have based on all of the information that you received in a very quick manner today. So if there's anyone that has anything for us, we have a few minutes.
This is Jennifer. I was also just going to mention that I saw that the link to the Arc City video wasn't working. So I just dropped a new link to that video in the chat. So hopefully you can all see that.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, thank you so much for this. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it was a labor of love to put this information together in such a condensed amount of time. It kind of had several different looks as it progressed over the last few months, but the work that everyone's doing in this, the importance of it, you know, just the possibilities of it for the communities that are listening in. You know, I hope that you've been able to take away some helpful information from what we've shared today. So thank you to everybody that's been involved in this process. And to end our meeting for today, just as we always do, mention a few of the upcoming things that are happening. I already talked about the Early Childhood Recommendations Panel meeting that's been moved up to the March 11th instead of March 18th next time. Our next webinar is in 2 weeks on March 9th, always at noon. We're always welcoming topics that you might be interested in, or if you have information to share as a presentation, we want you to reach out to us about that. And then the links to register for the stakeholders group meeting on April 1st, and the cabinet meeting will be that morning. It can be watched live on our YouTube channel. And so my closing words for today, in keeping with our kindergarten transitions and kindergarten readiness theme, my quote is, because our days are filled with love and laughter, kindergarten will always be a magical place. And so in all of the years that I worked in early childhood as a provider, I just loved the kindergartners. They're so fun and funny and just curious and so full of life and love. And so, and they are very magical in my opinion. So we hope that all of you have a magical rest of your day, and that we will look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. And we always thank you for joining us. So goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.